Shalom, brother.
Shalom. I'm
Shalom.
going to do it like this.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Hey, so talk about for a minute, how do you feel like these intelligence briefings are going? And I mean, say
Man.
a few words there. It's amazing, huh?
Man, they're powerful, Steve. I
Yeah,
mean, the Lord told us to do it. And I mean, it's like, look at some of the things that have been accomplished.
yeah,
I'm talking about in Carbondale, Illinois. And it's obvious what happened there once you've heard us talk about it.
yeah.
And then what we have to do is we're bringing the light into the world. We're bringing the light to the masses. And, it's like this: if you can erase the question mark in people's minds, then they'll follow you. And so Jesus is looking to erase all doubt and question marks in people's mind and answer their questions.
That's
People
good.
just people just have questions. They want to know why this is, and so forth. And I believe these intelligence briefings play a big role in that.
That's
And
good.
they are just what they are because sometimes the prophetic intelligence that comes out in these meetings,
Yeah, it's powerful. And
it just,
the crowds that come to
yeah.
these are followers of yours and ours, and by the virtue of the things that we cover on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis,
Mm,
the people that come to want to get to see it in person, this is like family, like I've never felt family in my life. It's like
it
everybody
is.
already knows each other even though they've never
Yeah.
met, right?
That's the truth. That's the truth, brother. And I just think we don't know how many of these we do. We're going to do one in Oregon, one in Texas, and now I know one in Israel.
Yeah,
And people need to fill that one up also.
yeah,
Man,
yeah.
what in the
We
world might come out there?
yeah. And that'll probably be in Jerusalem having that intelligence briefing.
Man,
Imagine that. So
that'd be
we do have
awesome.
some more space. People are a little more hesitant to go to talk about the fact that some people feel a little bit nervous. They're afraid that the war is close by. It's really not. When they're fighting, it's a long ways away.
It
Yeah,
is, and uh, it's just like this. Tourists are protected more than anybody
yeah,
when they come to Israel
yeah.
because that's so much of their income, so much of everything. Even the enemies don't seem to want to bother tourists. People don't, they don't like
Well,
to
both
attack
sides
tourists.
earn their living
Mm,
through the tourism.
through
Both
the
the
tourism.
how do
Hmm.
we say it? The Arab peoples, the
Hmm.
Palestinians, and Israel. In fact, what people don't know is that when these fighting is going on, you still have Palestinians and Arabs that help do the hotels, and everybody's
They
working
do.
together. They all make their living. They let the fighters fight where fighting gets fought. It's a long ways away by the coast or out there.
Yeah.
You know,
We were eating the last time, and when we were all over there was that a year ago, 2 years
yeah,
ago, Steve? Help me here.
year and a couple months or something like that.
Yeah. We were sitting by the Sea of Galilee there at a restaurant eating, and me and Robin and some of our team was sitting there, and Amber and Robbie. And so we're sitting there eating, and it's on Shabbat. Well, it's Arabs that run the restaurant on Shabbat because you know
The Jews
yeah,
aren't working on Shabbat.
yeah, and we were just talking and having a great conversation. We got to talking about music and instruments,
Mm.
and the Sea of Galilee was right there to my right, and we were sitting there in the wind blowing, and it was, I mean, how do you describe such a thing as
Yeah,
that? Yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
it's that has it can't be said too much because people that are nervous to go, they don't realize. I mean, I've been there like
Yeah.
7, 8. This will be your eighth or ninth time I've done
Hmm.
that many tours with people, and it's the safest place. Israel is like the safest place for tourism. I feel safer in Israel than any American city
Yeah.
at night. I just would.
Yeah, I would probably feel safer there than Chicago.
Yeah,
You know, uh, but this year we're going to do two 11th hour meetings on the
good.
tour that will include in the tour. And that means the whole band will be there. We're going to do a whole prophetic meeting, and that's for the Elijah streams and the 11th hour, all of us coming together. And there's no telling what the Lord will tell us, Steve.
So
And
good.
so we'll raise a
Yeah.
sound in Israel.
Oh, great. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone saw what happened to Trump this last week and
Mm-hmm.
34 accounts, and everyone was saying, what are the prophets saying now? Now what? So I'm just going to ask that question, now what, and throw it to you, Robin, and see what you have to
Well,
say.
I was thinking about that, and of course I watched it like everybody watched it, and I
Yeah.
I saw that big farce that took place, and it's very obvious to everybody what kind of setup all that was. I mean, it don't even take, you don't have to be a prophet to see through that.
Right.
That was just, you know, it was deception from one end to the other, and but here's the thing. I asked the Lord, I said, what do you want me to say about that? And just as plain, I just want to tell everybody nothing's changed. There's nothing changed. Trump's still heaven's man. There's nothing changed. And so there's no reason to be afraid. This is the whole thing. The enemy would love to make everybody afraid. Don't get afraid of such things like this.
Yeah.
We forget things, Steve, that as people I'm talking about
Yeah.
in general, we forget that these men breathe. These men have to have oxygen to live. They're just men. They
Hmm.
breathe. They have a heart that beats inside their chest, and they're one heartbeat away of being somewhere else. I mean, God is the one. In Him we live, we move, we have our being. So no wonder Jesus said, why do you want to fear what men can do to you? He said, the worst thing they can do to you is afflict your body. He said, after that, they have no more power over you. He said, but you need to fear the one who, after he is killed, can cast into hell. And so, nothing changed here. Nothing's changed. Don't let your perception change, is what I would tell people. God hasn't changed his mind. He hasn't changed his mind 1 minute. Trump is still heaven's choice.
That's right.
And
Good.
so,
And didn't he put
mhm,
to, a number of times, at least several times on this program, you reminded people that still Trump has to make his choice that he wants to
he
be president.
does.
He's made it very clear,
Yeah,
hasn't
I
he?
mean, there's no let up in his voice.
Yeah,
And if anybody could be uh, beat any more than him, I haven't seen them yet. And
not even.
if he stood up today and said, I'm not doing this, well, nobody could say, well, I don't blame you. I mean, I
Yeah,
mean, everybody would say, well, I don't blame you. But, for him to do that, they would have beat him.
yeah. He
And he's,
keeps saying
mm,
November 5 is going to be the most
mhm,
important date
it is.
in U.S. history or something like that.
It is.
I keep looking at it and going, how are they even going to have an election? But he keeps talking about like there's going to be one. So unless he's got something else up his sleeve
Well,
for 5.
well, here's what people have to understand something. A kingdom of deception, the greatest power of a kingdom of deception is deception. That's the greatest power the kingdom of deception has, is deception.
Mm.
And the way they do the deception is they have to create new perception, because what a man perceives is the world he lives in. Whatever you perceive is the world you live in, and that's where you make all your decisions according to your perception. So they have a kingdom of deception has to change. Deception has to change the perception of the masses, and that's what you're looking at.
Yeah,
You're looking at that. The Lord told me, He said, that's the silent shepherd. That the voice, it's the voice of a stranger. The silent shepherd is the voice of this kingdom, is the media. It's the media. It changes the perception of people until they begin to operate in decisions that they're leading them on. See, you don't have to tell somebody, follow me and do this. If it's wrong, you would say, no, I'm not doing that. But if your perception was wrong,
yeah,
you'll make your decision and go anywhere they want you to go according to the way you perceive things are working. And they try to strike fear into people. These people are not God, and they don't have They don't have anything like that. They don't, all they can do is create narratives that change perception.
Hmm.
And if you think it's wrong and you think Trump is out, then you're going to act like he's out.
Yeah.
After that 34 uh, crap that they posted out there, when they said 34, which is that's foolish. It was stupid. There's no 34.
There's no 34. They didn't even have any official charges. They
Uh-uh.
didn't.
No, and that ought to tell you what's going on. You know, the Lord told me, He said, and this was before this ever happened, and you know this, but I'm not going to pursue this right now, but something I think I told you and some of the people that work with you. The Lord told me, He said, they think to open the bottomless pit in Manhattan. This was weeks ago. And, but He's going to close it. And so I saw it open, I saw it close, and I saw it close together and was welded like a crooked line. And
Is
He
this
said,
as it relates to the trial or
yeah,
something?
that's
Okay.
what it was about.
Okay.
And they tried to open a pit, a portal there. But that's the first time we've ever seen them open a lower portal in
Really?
in the bottom of the earth. And
Hmm.
sometime we'll talk about that, but we got to be real strategic about this stuff right this moment.
Well, and I at some point, either now or in a few minutes, I had said I missed your 11th hour program this
Mm.
morning because we're getting ready for this. But you said you think you made a few people mad. What do you want to talk about that at all?
Well, I said I made every dog in the junkyard mad.
That's what
But
I couldn't think of how you said that. Yeah.
yeah, but Steve, thinking about today's program, this is a special program. I just have left the 11th hour, not an
Yeah.
hour ago, and came up here. And I I think the Lord wants to talk about something here today
Okay.
about time and timing.
Hmm.
See, see what people don't people will start, and they did, about the prophets. Oh, the prophets missed it. You know, the prophets' ministry has been so far removed from the church for so many years that it's not even understood anymore. And somehow it's been woven into religion and other of the fivefold ministry. It's been weaved in and out of it until it's defined by another call. It's defined according to somebody's idea of what a prophet is. Even prophets, a lot of them don't really understand the ministry of a prophet, even though they do it. And prophets, if they ever understood, let me see if we can get into this,
Sure.
because
Go for it.
especially now, this is
Yeah.
going to help people. Um, I want us to look at Genesis 1, verse 11, and watch what this says. It says, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day. Now, this was the third day. Uh, when God created a man, people have this idea that he just reached his hand into a wet earth and just fashioned this man and did this. What God, I want you to think of it this way. On the third day, a mist came up out of the earth. This is what Genesis 2:6 is talking about. A mist came up out of the earth. And Genesis 1 and 2 are the same accounts of how they were carried out. And the mist came up out of the earth, and God wet the whole face of the ground.
Hmm.
And he stepped down into that glory, that mist. Because what people may not understand is when it talks about a river that came out of paradise and
Yeah.
watered the garden. Now, believe it or not, I'm making a point about this. And watered the garden, that it, in Hebrew, it reveals the words that it was rivers of light.
Hmm.
It was shining with light. And it went into paradise and then was parted into four heads that went like the four corners of the earth.
Yeah.
And so it was rivers of light, rivers of revelation of God. And that watered everything. And this mist would come up from these underground rivers. And so God on the third day laid down in that wet earth. And in those days, the topsoil would have been about 6, 7 feet probably deep. And so he would have laid down in that earth and cast his image underground. And the scripture says in Psalm 139, about verse 15, David said, I was curiously wrought in your underground workshop. And so there's a workshop under the ground where God cast his image. And after his image was cast, he came back up out of that earth. And when he did, that was on day 3. Everything that had seed in itself had to be planted that day. Well, man has seed in himself.
Oh, interesting.
So he had to be planted that day. So after 3 days and nights, on day 6, God stepped back down to that place and began to uncover the earth and raise that cast up out of the dust. And when he raised him up, it would have looked like he was raising him out of a grave, bringing him up from the dead. And this was a prophecy that said, if man ever fails and he ever sins, then I myself will take the form of a man and die and be buried 3 days and 3 nights, from
Wow.
day 3 to day 6, and I will rise from the dead after 3 days and nights and redeem that man back. So the prophecy was given on that day, and it was prophesied the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. That's what he's talking about. And so here is the thing. This is something that's astounding. It's astounding. And people, if you're going to understand prophets and the prophecies, now I'm not talking about prophecy teaching of end time scenarios. There's some great prophecy teachers out there, but I'm tying the heart of God. There's a difference. Prophets are the officers of the court of heaven, and they bring the verdict of heaven as in the court into the earth so God can try the men here.
Hmm.
And he tries high political figures. When man or a group of men appeal to heaven because they can appeal to no higher in the earth, God will send prophets and he'll bring the court of Jehovah into the realm of men. And it'll look like the men are on trial, like Trump or someone else. And it's not. They're on trial that's trying God's men. There's the difference. God sets up a courtroom, and whatever they tried him with, they're pronouncing their own verdict all the time. And so whenever they do this, and it's a serious offense to touch God's anointed and do his prophets harm. He made a difference in those two.
Who are the anointed then? If it's not the
Well, the anointed would be you.
okay,
It would be your team.
sure,
It would be Trump. He's anointed to be president of this
yeah,
nation.
I see.
Whoever God has anointed, he said, touch not my anointed. And then he said, do my prophets no harm.
So those are two different things. I've never heard it
Yeah,
taught that way.
yeah. And they're serious things.
Yeah,
They bring harvest from heaven that men can't deal with. And they're tied together, anointed and prophets. They're tied together. And as sooner prophets kind of learn this, the more you'll understand their call.
yeah,
Now, I'm not talking about prophecy teachers. I'm
yeah.
talking about prophets who prophesy the heart of God, the verdicts of heaven, the words of the Lord, God in his system of government, prophets who the prophet's mantle brings deliverance and preservation. By a prophet, Israel was delivered, and by a prophet, they were preserved. it's a wide, vast thing. It brings unification. It unifies and brings people together. Elijah on Mount Carmel, he gathered all the people together to him. That's a prophet's mantle. A prophet advises kings. A prophet anoints kings. A prophet, if a king goes rogue, that's why a prophet points his finger and says, "Thus saith the Lord, thou art the man." It don't make any difference who it is. So a prophet's role is different. Do not define it as a pastor's role, a teacher's role, or an evangelist's role,
Oh, that's good.
or an apostle's role. The apostle would come closer to a prophet than any of the others, because an apostle, it's like the hand of God.
Yeah.
You have the teacher, cleans out the ears. You have the ring finger, the pastor married to the church. You have the middle finger, it's longer than the other four, and it goes between all the others, the evangelist. You have the prophet, the index finger, "Thus saith the Lord." He points the way, or she points the way. Then you have the apostle. It's the only one of the only one of the five that can touch all the other four. And so an apostle has to be able to touch them all in order to
Oh, that's
establish.
good. That's really good. Makes sense.
Yeah. And so when you start to see these things, but you have to understand it in this light that I just read,
Yeah.
because here's something astounding. When God raised Adam up out of that dust, the cast of himself,
Hmm.
the image and likeness of himself, that carried the prophecy that if Adam ever blows it, I will have to die, take the form of a man, be buried 3 days and nights, like day 3, raised
Wow.
again on day 6. So he said, this prophecy will not come into play unless Adam sins. There would be no need for it unless Adam sinned. So the timing of the prophecy was put in the man's hand. It was put in Adam's hand. He would determine when that prophecy would start.
And just real quick, in defining terms, you're specifically saying it wasn't Eve, it
No,
had to be
it was
Adam.
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 Because the Bible says, it makes it very clear, she was deceived.
Yeah.
He was not deceived. So what he did was treason, high treason
Wow.
against heaven.
Yeah, the greater sin.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
people that point to Eve, they're not looking at it correctly. The
Mm-mm.
greater sin was Adam.
It was Adam's. And you'll find in Genesis chapter 3, around verse 6, I think it is, it says, when the woman saw that I'm looking at it right here, it was
Yeah.
already open to it.
Yeah.
It says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, a tree that was pleasant to the eyes, a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her. And he did eat. He was standing there the whole time. He knew exactly what was right
Wow.
and wrong.
Hmm.
And he stood there and let Satan, through that serpent, deceive that woman. And he could have stopped it.
Wow.
Well,
I always
that,
pictured him somewhere off in the
sure,
bulrushes or something, doing
that's
something
right.
else, and then learned about this later. He was right there.
He was standing right there. She turned to her
Wow.
husband with her.
Oh
I mean,
man.
it says that she did eat
Yeah,
and
it
gave
does.
also unto her husband with her. He was right there.
Right there. Amazing.
And he did eat. So he could have stopped it. So his act was treason. There was nothing else you could define it as. Treason against the high king, God. Now, God loved man so much that he gave him his part of prophecy and fulfillment, the timing.
Hmm.
You determine the time. He said, I've already been slain in this prophetic outline. I've already showed you what's going to happen. Now, it's up to you when this takes place. And so God loved man so much, he put the timing of his own becoming flesh and dying into man's hands when man would do this thing. You think about that just a minute. So the timing of when prophecy occurs is given into the hands of man.
Yeah.
Remember when in the time of 2 kings, and now we're back to political matters right now.
Okay.
In the timing of the 2 kings, well, Saul and David. You've heard
Yeah.
me talk about that before, and you and I
Yeah.
have discussed that.
Well, right, and we talked about the two
Mhm.
kings and the two presidents. Both of those. Well, even in Israel, we sat there in Jerusalem and went over some of this stuff. Really
Yeah,
fascinating. Still
yeah.
relevant. Yeah.
Oh, it is. It's still going on.
Yeah.
See, because Samuel, now watch this. Here's a prophet bringing the court of heaven to Saul. And he walks into Saul's presence and he says, why didn't you obey the Lord? The Lord, all capitals, God in his government. Why didn't you obey the Lord? He said, I did. He said, I utterly destroyed Amalek, all of this stuff. Samuel said, well, then what's the sound of those bleating sheep I hear in my ear? He said, oh, well, we saved the best to sacrifice to the Lord your God. He didn't say my God. He said your God, the Lord your God. And Samuel said, and he didn't kill Agag either. And he said, and Agag's descendants rose up in Esther's day again. He said, why didn't you do this? Well, he said, bring Agag out here. Now watch this close. He brings Agag out on the scene. This is a heathen king who has made many mothers in Israel childless.
Really.
And Samuel said it. He said, as your sword has made many mothers in Israel childless, so shall your mother be childless. And Samuel took a sword. That's seed and harvest. That's the government. He took a sword and he hewed Agag in pieces. It don't mean he just butchered him up. It means he whittled that man in pieces.
And we don't even have any other record of Samuel doing harm to any. It was like, I didn't even know how he knew how to kill a man and cut him into pieces. Talk about under the anointing, I guess.
Well, and think about how fast that blade had to be moving.
Yeah.
To hew him in pieces in front of Saul and everybody. And there he lays in pieces on the ground.
Crazy.
And now we probably have an idea, it could be that's how David learned to use a sword. And so anyway, under Samuel, I don't know.
Interesting.
I've
That's
seen
fascinating,
it.
though. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's plausible, possible.
Yeah, I saw a movie one time try to portray it that way.
Really?
And I thought, where'd you get that from? Well, I found it. That's where they got it.
Yeah, I mean, I had never. I mean, I've heard that.
Yeah.
By the way, I mean, Saul deserved the same thing for his high treason or whatever you would call that. But
it was treason.
Yeah.
And see, and then then he looks at Saul and he says, the Lord would have recognized your kingdom forever. He said, but now it's being taken from you and given to a neighbor of yours that's better than you. And he turned to walk off. Well, that's the verdict from heaven. That's the verdict from heaven. The court was in the king's court because who could try Saul but God? There was nobody else but the Lord could try Saul. Saul would just simply kill anybody else. But he was afraid of Samuel because Samuel's mouth was speaking from heaven and he knew it. So Samuel turned to walk off and Saul grabbed his robe and tore the robe. And Samuel whirled around. Now watch this. At that moment, everything that happens is prophetic. They're caught in a prophetic move. And once again, Saul determines the timing. Because he said the kingdom's been taken from you, but he didn't say when. But now he said, now it's going to be ripped from your hands and given to the neighbor better than you. Today, you have lost your kingdom. Today, Saul's act determined when that happened. So Saul says, I must stop my kingdom from leaving my control. I've got my crown. I'm still sitting on my throne. Am I not still king? No, you're not. Somebody else has now been given that kingdom. All you have is a crown and a throne. They have the kingdom. Now what's got to be transferred is your crown and throne to them. So Samuel leaves, and the Lord said, fill your horn with oil and go and anoint one of Jesse's sons to be the new king. He's already got the kingdom the other day.
Yeah.
Now go anoint him as king. And he said, if I go anoint him and Saul hears of it, he'll kill me. He wasn't afraid of dying, or he wouldn't have hewed Agag in pieces. He's saying, if he kills me before I can pour my oil, there won't be a king of Israel. The
Yeah,
kingdom will.
that's a. When I heard you teach on that, it never made sense. I just thought he was afraid for his life. You make a much more
Mm-hmm.
focused point that this was about. He needed to get that guy anointed,
He had
and if
to.
he was killed on the way, that guy David would not be anointed. Then there
That's
was
right.
nothing in place for that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so and then so he goes up, he anoints David, and the Bible said the day he anointed David, the Spirit of God came on David and left Saul and went to David. Now
Wow.
Saul's trying to wear a crown and sit on a throne, and you have to be anointed to carry the weight of a kingdom, or it'll
Wow.
kill you. It'll drive you crazy. It'll drive you crazy. I'm going to say that again. I want everybody to listen. You have to have the anointing of heaven to carry the weight of a kingdom, or it will make you mentally unstable and
Think.
insane.
In other words, Biden is as Biden does right now. I mean, that's why he can't live under this. I mean,
He's
he
not
can't put two
anointed for it.
sentences together without tripping up.
He's not anointed to carry the weight.
Yeah.
And he's the second half of Saul's kingdom. Obama was the first half when Saul had a mind. And then it was the second half when he didn't.
Hmm.
And so now you're looking at this someone trying to carry the weight of a kingdom with no anointing to do it. So he goes home and rests, and Trump finishes that trial and goes to a, what was it, a WWE or something
Yeah.
event?
UFC. Is that
Yeah,
what it is?
whatever it was. And then he
Yeah.
went somewhere else, and he went somewhere else. And then he did with energy that just don't stop. It's because you can't feel the weight of the kingdom if you're anointed to carry it. See, and so you got these two kings, Saul and David. Now watch. David goes, and Saul finally finds out. We'll just go ahead in time. He finally finds out that David is the king. He's been anointed king. Saul even acknowledged at one point he was king. And he said, don't kill my sons. Don't take my sons out when you take the throne. He knew he was the king. And
Wow.
so he goes and chases David round and around the mountain. We got to indict him, indict him, indict him, indict him, indict. They're chasing him all around the mountain, all around the mountain. David's just gathering more people to him as he goes. Everybody's loving
Gee,
David, and it just keeps
gee.
coming up. Well, Saul falls asleep in a cave, and it said it was the sleep of the Lord had come on him. In other words, his harvest had came. David is hiding in the cave. And him and one of his men are standing there, and he says, let me take this spear and stick him to the ground. He said, because the prophecy, now listen to this, where the Lord said he would give him into your hands for you to choose what you want. He said,
No,
has
that
come
was
to,
truth. He wasn't wrong.
that was a real prophecy, and
Yeah.
that's the only record we have of it. That's the only record we have of it, but it's revealed to us by one of his men.
Yeah.
So undoubtedly, he had a prophecy from a prophet that said, the Lord's going to give him into your hands for you to choose if you want to kill him or not. And he said, here's that time. He's done it. And undoubtedly, the prophet told him it'll happen twice. because it was happened again the second time, and he wouldn't kill him. He could have killed him and went right to the throne. He could have done it twice and speeded up time. The time of this throne was given into his hands.
And you're
And
not just saying he could have seized that opportunity. It was literally given to him.
to
If he had
choose.
wanted to, he wouldn't have been punished for doing it,
No,
right?
no. He said, let the Lord take him if the Lord wants him. He thought it was best. You can tell what's happening. Number one, he don't want to do anything that would sow a wrong seed. And he said he was anointed. He ain't anointed no more, but he used to be. And he said, I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed. Now that's what he was thinking of. The next thing was this. He's thinking, what will the nation think of me if I just overthrow it? And so he just said, no, let the Lord do it. So the Lord, watch now, when he put it in the hands of the Lord, but the timing was given to David to bring the prophecy to pass. The event was going to happen, but the timing was given to a man. That's what people don't get. And so the prophets missed it. The prophets missed it. Oh, if you could just get somebody to listen.
Well, in other words, can I say this way?
Yeah.
If Trump had wanted to, when the election was being stolen, he could have taken it at that time if
I
he
think
wanted to.
so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
But it wasn't the wisdom of the Lord, but it wouldn't have been disobedient
No,
necessarily.
no. And I think we don't know how many opportunities he's had to have just stepped right into it.
Yeah, we don't. I
No,
bet a
we
lot.
don't. Yeah, and there's things that we'll probably never know unless the Lord tells us.
Yeah, yeah.
And but the thing is he said, no, remember, listen what Trump is saying. Let November 5th tell the story.
He keeps saying that.
And he says, my revenge will be victory.
Yeah, and another time he said it a couple of times. And one time he said, they asked him, "Do you want? Is this your revenge? You're going to get revenge?" He said another time he said, "My revenge is success," and you got the sense he really meant that. Now, at the same time, Robin, he knows there are people that are going to end up in a firing squad or the gallows or of some type, which could even be some of those players we're talking about. But
Well,
it was like that wasn't his primary.
well, with the heart of David,
Yeah,
David has a heart that's different than other people. Most kings in those days killed all the heirs
yeah,
as soon as they became king so that they wouldn't have to deal with rival heirs trying to come up and take their throne. And David didn't do that. Matter of fact, David told Abner, remember Abner that was Saul's general, and why Abner didn't die in the battle, I don't know. Now, that's something you need to think about
yeah,
because Jonathan and Saul died. Where was his number one soldier? He didn't die. They don't even say he was wounded.
yeah. What do we make of that?
Yeah, it almost sounds like he might have ran.
I see.
He gets
Yeah,
out of it, whatever it was. I'm not accusing him. I don't want to judge him, but it makes you wonder what was the circumstances that got him out of the battle unscathed. I don't
it's
know.
interesting. Very
Maybe the
fascinating.
Lord preserved him. Maybe he wasn't a coward. Maybe the Lord preserved him. We've seen Abner do some great things. David told Abner when he failed to wake up, when David came in and took Saul's spear and water bottle, he hollered back at Abner and said, you ought to die.
For not protecting the king.
Yeah, he judged him right there as the
Yeah.
king. He judged him.
Oh, wow.
And so he was going to die from that point. It didn't make no difference. He was going down. And Joab killed him. Well, here is the thing. So, what was we talking about? We get off
Well,
on my,
yeah. I mean, we're talking about the heart of the king and the heart of
oh yeah,
David.
heart
That
of David.
he didn't seize
Yeah.
it when he could have.
Yeah, and he didn't kill Saul's heirs.
Yeah,
When Abner came to him and said, that's where it got me off, Abner.
yeah,
When Abner came to him and said, Steve, I don't why you get me off like that. You just
Don't blame
you
me.
you get me off subject like that, kid. Steve. Okay.
That's fun.
All right. All right. No, you don't either. I do.
Yeah, I do. We
But
kind of
but
both do.
but anyway, Abner came to him and said, I want to restore the kingdom to you. I
Yeah.
want to bring you the rest of the kingdom over, not just Judah and Benjamin. I want to bring, or Judah and the other tribe. I want to come. I want to come instead of just Judah. I'll bring all the rest of them, Benjamin, everybody to you. He said, okay. He said, but don't you come and see me unless you bring my wife, Michal, with you. That's Saul's daughter.
Yeah.
Remember, Saul took her from him and
Oh,
gave
I
her to
didn't really.
somebody else.
Oh, he did. Okay.
When he went after David, he took Saul. Remember, she helped David escape, let him down by the wall, put an image in the bed, and made him think it was David. Saul got mad, gave her to another man,
Now, is
and
this Michael or is it this was
Michael,
okay?
Michael, or Michael, Michael,
How do you
and
say it? Yeah.
and so he gave her to another man. Well, she lived with him about 11 years or something like that, and then David takes the throne. And Abner wants to restore all of Israel to him. And David said, you bring my wife to me.
What do you
She's my
know?
wife. But she's Saul's daughter. He didn't bring her to him to kill her. He said she's, and so Abner went down there to that guy's house and said, Michael, you come with me. Michal, you come with me. And her husband started crying, saying, no, no. Abner told him, go back home. And took her. And as he was going away, he followed along crying behind her. And Abner said, you either turn around, turn around and go home. And he took Michael to David.
Gee.
Well, remember Mephibosheth came before David
Yeah.
and said he thought for sure David was going to kill him. Thought for sure, but David wouldn't wipe out Saul's line. And so he restored him to his position and his lands and made him as one of his sons. Well, that's the heart of David.
Yeah.
And Trump could actually come back in office and suddenly say something like this. If you show yourself to be a good person, I won't bother you. That the day you get out of line, the full weight of judgment will come down on you.
Oh,
I
interesting,
mean, that's the
Robin.
way he is. You never noticed Trump is like that.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting that you'd say that because other people do in fact point out that
Mm-hmm.
um, he's not messing around. I mean, I think supposedly there are um, tribunals going on even as we speak over people that have been arrested. So I don't,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
I mean,
about
we're just
that.
talking about the top players
Yeah, and
is
his
really what you're
heart.
talking about. Yeah, yeah,
And see, like
that's
it's
interesting.
you let him and DeSantis go head to head and watch what happened. I mean, they're just chewing at each other. Or DeSantis is chewing on Trump, just chewing on him, chewing on him. And then you see these others, but as soon as that's over, Trump says, oh, well, everybody was running for office then.
Well, I mean, he's even shown some of that
Yeah,
regarding Nikki
he did.
Haley. He's like, okay, we had some good
Yeah,
knockouts. That was fun. Now let's just all be friends again. I mean, to some degree, presidents do that, but this was more pronounced.
it
Those
is.
were really nasty things
Sure,
flying back and forth,
sure.
and Trump's ready to just move on.
That's exactly
Some
right. And
people
see,
are suggesting that DeSantis may yet be his VP. I have no idea, but it would work. It would work. He
but you
would make
see,
that work.
yeah, but you see what happens. Trump's heart is
Yeah,
like
that's good.
that. And here's the thing. He infuriated everybody the first time when he held up his Bible and he said, this is what we're going to go by right here. This
Yeah.
is what we're going to go by. And it made everybody mad. Oh, it's a photo op. It's a photo op. Well, this time he takes the Lee Greenwood Bible
Oh yeah.
and it's called God Bless the USA Bible, the King James Bible, and he holds it up like this on television and endorses the Bible. And he said, this is just not long ago. And he said,
Really?
it said, this is my favorite book in the world. I have many of them in my house. And I'm glad, it said it's the King James version of the Bible, and I'm glad to, and he endorses this Bible. Well, he's doing that in the time when AIs are trying to rewrite the Bible
Yeah.
to make all religions inclusive, but the digital world fears the written page.
Well, and people would, like you said, they're accusing him of a photo op or holding the Bible wrong
Yeah.
that one time. And
Mm-hmm.
but name me another liberal or conservative president
Yeah.
who would even
Yeah.
suggest a photo op like
No,
that. They stay away from it to have more
that's
friends
right.
in high places. They don't do
That's
that.
right.
And then we hear that they secretly
Yeah.
love God, but they never talk about it. Well, Trump doesn't mince words.
No,
He'll
and
point out multiple times. He'll point
that's
out
the
and says, "This
truth.
is who we answer to."
That's exactly right. And he said, and I said this not long ago. I said, how many times does he have to hold up the Bible before Christians want somebody and believe somebody holding up a Bible? How many
Right.
times has he got to hold it up?
I mean,
How many times does he have to endorse it that probably sold millions of Bibles? It's obvious he's heaven's choice.
yeah, so true.
Now, my point is this. He's the timing of all of this is in his hands. And when I say that they
No.
didn't miss it. And the prophets that prophesied he'd be president, I remember I had a prominent person on a major prophetic television program or YouTube program asked me on the phone, said, do you think Trump will win the 2020 election? This was before the election. I'll never forget where I was standing, the
Hmm.
phone I had in my hand, exactly where I was, I remember it. And I stopped and I was listening to my spirit. And they didn't really nobody know who I was then. I mean,
Yeah, it was
but
new. You weren't
yeah,
really as well
no.
known, not by a long shot
And I
yet.
but I was talking to him and he was well known.
Yeah,
And I said, and somebody I respect just off the charts,
sure.
respect. But I said this, I said, yes, yes, I do. I'll never forget it. Yes, yes, I do. I said, whether anybody knows it or not, I'm not sure yet.
I remember you talking about that. I remember
Just
you
like
saying,
that. See, I never said he would walk into office in 2020. I said he would win. And I didn't really say he would win. I said Biden wouldn't. Well, he didn't.
yeah,
And Trump did win. But everybody keeps talking about a landslide, a landslide, a landslide. I said this on the air in front of millions of people, I guess. I said, well, a landslide, remember, is something that it takes a while to dig out of. I said,
yeah.
everything on the hill comes down in a landslide.
Did you know in your heart, in your head, any more, any details, or did you just feel to prophesy that? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. Yeah, it just came on me to prophesy.
Okay.
And I said, and I knew he won. I knew Biden didn't. I knew, uh, I knew you're going to have to dig out of a landslide. And what have we been doing for the last almost 4 years?
Oh man, every minute.
If Trump didn't win, why won't it go away? How come it just won't go away and we move on? And why is it fought so hard to where you have all these false charges and everything else? Anything can be done trying to break the man, frame the man, destroy the man, do anything you can to the guy. And he's holding up the Bible saying, we're going to go by this. This is God's word. Jesus Christ is the boss. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. I'm telling you, people don't understand prophecy, and they get this from this. God is in control. God is in control. Whatever he says he's going to do, whether we like it or not.
See, I've been listening to you talk on this a lot, and it's becoming clearer and clearer that
Mm-hmm.
what your understanding is, and I agree with it, is that God is sovereign, and He usually demonstrates His sovereignty through the choices His anointed ones make.
Absolutely.
That's what His sovereignty looks like.
See, we say it like this in Esther's day. Okay, look at Queen Esther. Here you have God, and he says, this is they're going to be delivered. Will the Jews be delivered? Absolutely. Absolutely. The timing of when that would happen was given to Esther. And here's what Mordecai, the prophet, said to Esther, prophesying. He said, if you, watch now, how do you know? He said, if you don't do this, he said, God will raise up deliverance from another place, but you and your family will, your father's house will not survive. He said, God will raise up deliverance from another place. So the plan is going to happen.
Yeah.
He said, regardless. But listen what he said then, Steve. He said, how do you know if you wasn't brought to the kingdom for such a time as this?
It's
You could
true.
do this in your time. Now, if it was raised up from another place, that time may have been delayed. But the timing is given to man. It was determined in Genesis 1. But the overall plan can't be changed. It's
Yeah.
going to happen.
By the way, I felt that same kind of what you just described, what Mordecai did and said, and how do you know? And this is going to sound like a different subject, but early on in this, when you started coming on the program and we were starting to, and I had someone go visit our property and re-engineer the gate so we couldn't get out, a big old electric gate.
Yeah.
And you said, they're sending you a message, and they were.
Mm-hmm.
But you said, this is the time, or this is the, I think that's the way you said it. This is the time when heroes are made. And it was like I felt it go through me. I thought, boy,
Yeah.
Robin just prophesied. You're either
Yeah.
going to hold tight,
Yeah.
or you're going to go and turn, and someone else will be a hero, is what I
Yeah.
heard.
That's
I
right.
knew I had an opportunity. And I remember at the time hearing you say that. You didn't camp on it, but you
No.
said this is the time when heroes are made.
See, it's like this. When you see, remember when, well, you don't remember it, but we've read it.
Yeah.
When the Lord told Moses, the children of Israel just kept on, kept on, kept on, kept on. You bring us out here because there were no graves in Egypt, and on and on and on. And the Lord told Moses, he said, move out of my way, and I'm going to walk up through the middle of them. And he said, in other words, all their harvest of everything they've said about dying is going to come up just like that. And he said, I will start over again with you. He said that. He said, I'll build a better nation and stronger out of you. Now, Moses said, Lord, don't do that. He said, because people will say that you only brought them out into the wilderness to kill them. He said, don't do that. Spare them, please, spare them. And watch what happened. The Lord said, all right. He said, I will. I'll do according to your word. He said, but watch, but as I live, my glory will fill this earth. In other words, the timing of the glory filling the earth had been changed. It was going to be fulfilled at that moment, and he was going to take him straight into the promised land. Everything was going to work if Moses had just moved and let their harvest come up as God passed up through the middle
Wow.
of them.
Wow.
And when Moses delayed the time, he said, and that's his time ran out. That's why he couldn't go to the promised land. Think about it. It said his natural forces were not abated. His eyes
That's
were not dim.
Well, we were always. I mean, the way I've been taught is Moses struck the rock twice or whatever, and God said, "All right, you were going to go in.
Well,
Now you're not
he
going to
ran
go
out
in."
of time. If you really want to know, people need to study that, because here is the thing. If you look at the 6 days of man, man will live 100. The days of man will be 120 years. That's really odd the way that's said in Genesis. The
Yeah.
days of man will be 120 years. Well, Moses lived to be 120. And 120 years is 120 jubilee years, which puts it at 6,000 years, the end of man's lease on the earth before the
Oh,
7,000 takes
oh,
place.
interesting.
And so
Wow.
Moses was a prophetic part of that. And he wouldn't move. He was the mediator, and he wouldn't let them die. And when he did, he stayed on this side of the Jordan with them. He ran out of time, even though his eyes were not dim, neither was his
When I
natural
hear that
forces
and you
abandoned.
teach it like that, it makes you wonder if Abraham could have stood and said, "No, not Sodom and Gomorrah. Let's do it another way." I don't know.
Well, see, why did God go talk to him? If Abraham had no say so, why visit him?
Well, right. He
And he,
said, "Should we hide from him what we're about to do?" And because he didn't hide from him, he started negotiating him
yeah,
down.
the reason he couldn't hide from him what he was going to do is he was in covenant with him.
Yeah,
And whatever's going to happen in time had to become through a man. It was determined in Genesis 1 when God cast his own image. This is the covenant he made with a man. If it's happening in time, then me being out of time, God says, will have to consult you, my covenant
interesting.
partner.
I mean, that's
Now,
the way he conducts himself.
that's exactly what I mean. And
Yeah,
and so he stopped at 10
yeah.
because Lot had 10 family members in Sodom. He had 10
Oh,
family members there. If you go back and study it, you'll find out there was 10 of his families there.
I see.
So
I
he
didn't know
stopped
that.
at 10 thinking, well, my family will be spared. But there wasn't 10. There was only 4 left in Sodom of Abraham's family. God wasn't even obligated to save them. But he did because of Abraham.
I've always thought, how righteous could Lot have been living there, being the only? I mean, what was he doing there? It wasn't very. It didn't seem very righteous to me.
Mm-mm.
You know.
And it said they vexed his soul daily,
You know,
living in that place. And when they got ready to leave, remember, they didn't want to leave. And the angels
I don't
got
get.
him by the arm. It says they led them out. They grabbed him and pulled him out of the city
Gee,
and said this, we can't do anything here until you're out. Until you're out. So if Abraham had stood there, and I'm not judging Abraham, dear
yeah,
God, dear
yeah. I hear
Lord, I'm
you.
not doing that. But if Abraham had stood there and said, Lord, if there's one, will you spare it for one? I believe Abraham could have said, Lord, if there's none there, would you give me a chance to go evangelize it? He'd have said, yes, yes. He was
Wow,
coming by there because he knew the harvest was coming, the Lord. So God said, I've got to go see for myself. He said, if the cry I've heard is as bad as what I've heard it is.
that's such a bizarre thing to me because God knows all and could have seen it all from heaven. Didn't need to go, and yet it's an interesting
Well,
point he makes it. He says it. So something about going there in person. Oh, I don't even know how what to
well,
make of that.
notice this. You can find out if you understand covenant is that he said this, there was 3 of them. There was the Lord and 2 angels.
Yeah, probably the
Okay,
Trinity, huh?
maybe so.
I
But
don't
but
know.
it
What
talks about
the
2 angels ending up in Sodom and
Yeah.
Gomorrah. Okay, they end up there. All right, now watch this. So it said when when God got up to leave Abraham's presence, he stayed there, he ate with him, he did this,
Yeah.
he washed his feet, he did all this. And when he got up to leave, he only got up to leave when Sarah started lying.
Okay.
It,
Yeah. So I
it-
didn't laugh. I didn't laugh.
yeah,
That
when
one.
she said, I did not laugh. He got up to leave. He
I'm
said,
out of
"Oh,
here.
yeah, you did laugh." And
That's
he
funny.
started leaving, and it said Abraham went after him, and it
Oh
said
wow.
the other 2 went on, but Abraham stayed yet before the Lord. So the Lord didn't go there. He went to Abraham. And what he did was, that's why he came by the tent. He said, there's all these thousands of people in two cities. They're going to die. He said, I can save them, Abraham. What do you say about it? If you will tell me, I'll do what you say about it. And Abraham stopped at 10. And so God never went down to the cities. He stayed with Abraham until it
Well,
was
and
done.
are you making the obvious point that maybe Abraham should have said, "What if there's one
Yes.
righteous?"
Yes, but
Yeah,
here's the deal. How many of us would have said that?
yeah.
The,
I mean, yeah.
the
Talk
first
about you.
thing,
I don't want to judge Abraham either because look what he
no,
got him down. He got the
no.
sovereign God of the universe down
And
to
the
10.
court of heaven.
Yeah,
Well, that shows you he was a type of Jesus at that moment, the advocate between the two, between heaven and earth. But here's the thing. You ever notice when you hear something, a prophetic word come, or you have a dream, or something happens and you hear something from the Lord, the first thing you think about is your family. A family.
right.
Well, that's because everything is personal.
Hmm.
And so Abraham thought of his family first. How can I fault him for that?
Right.
I would have thought of my children. I'd have thought of,
Yeah.
and you would have too. I mean, people just
Yeah. I
generally,
think if in my own rational thinking, I'm thinking if that's wicked, I would say, can you just rescue my family?
yeah,
I don't care if they're, get anyone saved on their way out if you want to, but it's probably good thinking that you're going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what I probably would have thought. But Abraham was more righteous. He's saying he's trying not to get it,
yeah,
not to have anyone perish with, and he
that's right. He was. So
almost pulls he almost pulls it off,
he
you
did. He
know.
would have done more, but you could imagine what he's thinking, surely, because he's thinking of all the city people, uh, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. He thinks, surely. So he's thinking of them and his family.
Yeah.
So he stops at 10 and he knows they're safe now. So surely out of thousands, there's 10 righteous. But Steve, there was only 4 out of thousands of people. And as it was in the days of Lot, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man.
Hmm.
So to say this, the reason people say prophets miss it, and prophets, well, they didn't hear that, this and that, is because they're judging God as not giving any part of the prophecy in the hands of a man.
You're
And that's
right.
just not true. That's just not true. It's never been true. It's always in the choice of a man, because he'd say, thus saith the Lord, this, this, and this. If you do this, this happens. If you don't do this, this happens. And so it's, I set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. You choose the one you want. So the part of prophecy, it's not whether the Messiah is going to come. He was coming. It depends on who says yes at what time it happens. And so at exactly the moment it takes place. Here's your big what ifs. What if Abraham hadn't have said, what if he'd have said, I don't save any of them? What if he'd have said, I don't want to decide, Lord, you decide, you're sovereign? Well, what would have happened? Well, what if, what if Mary had have said to the angel Gabriel, nah, I'm not going to do that.
That's
Nah.
like Sarah laughing if she had done that.
Yeah. What if
My,
Sarah had have said, that's hilarious. I'm too old to have a child. But what if she'd have went on and said, I'm not doing that. I'm too old. It's going to hurt too bad. I'm not doing
yeah,
that.
that's a good point.
What if when the Lord said, circumcise yourself, Abraham, and all your house, and him that age, what if he'd have said, not at my age? What if he'd have said no? What if you had have said, no, I'm not going to do Elijah streams. I'm not going to do Elijah list. I quit. It's been too hard.
Or what if they're coming after my family? They're taking my gate apart and reassembling it
Yeah,
to send a point. I mean, I had a choice to stop right there.
yeah. But the Lord would have raised up somebody else to have
Yeah,
got his plan done.
I didn't want that.
Well, that's
You
the
know,
point.
yeah, isn't
But
that interesting?
that's because you love him
Yeah,
and you want every waking day of your life to be what he wants.
yeah,
But somebody else would have been raised up, but it might have been a week or a year later
yeah,
because the timing. See, and we say, well, it's got to happen at a certain time. It depends. God can stop time. Have you ever wondered why did Joshua say, sun stand still, moon stand still? That could have been the extra time for the fullness of time that God sent his son. It moved time around until Jesus got there exactly at the moment he was supposed to be. What about when he got in the boat and immediately it was to the other side?
wow.
What kind of time was made up for that had been lost? See, but
It's
to
inter-
say the prophets missed it, they just think God is in control
well,
whether
I
they
think
like it
I
or
mean
not.
the prophets. I think that whole point when large groups of prophets or prophetic people, however, who had prophesied that he was going to be, and then say, well, and some apologize for getting it wrong when they didn't get it
No, they
wrong.
didn't get it wrong.
They didn't get it wrong, but they were, what's the CYA, cover your assets, whatever. They were saying,
Mm-hmm.
if I apologize now quickly and say I got it wrong, then God will be pleased because he'll say, thanks for staying humble and saying you missed it. But they didn't miss it.
No, they
And
didn't.
it's like, it's tragic because maybe that I'm overstating it when I say it's
No,
tragic, but it's like,
I don't think you are. I don't think you are because what if Elijah had a said, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Jezebel, I going to get eat by dogs at the wall of Jezreel. Look, look, I probably missed that, and I apologize for saying that. He never even saw it happen, but he never recanted on that one moment. And after he left this world in a fiery chariot, it happened. But it didn't happen for a while after that. And what if when Isaiah said, a virgin will conceive and bear a son? Well, it's been 300 years. Maybe we missed it on that. But 1,000 years later, or however long, it
there's
happened.
something about, and maybe I'm not throwing too many hand grenades in the middle of this, but I'm thinking of the prophesying, and I don't remember if it's Elisha or Elijah, but the prophecy was, tomorrow at this time, a loaf of barley will only be and
Yeah.
this, and someone dissed him and said that's
Oh,
never going to
yeah.
happen, and said
That's
not only
right.
is it going to happen, blah blah, but you'll never see it because
That's right.
there's an offense that God takes for people that refuse to believe a prophet's word. I don't know what would you say about that side of
Well,
things?
that goes back to touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. You know, when all the prophets turned against Elijah, only Elisha stood with him.
Yeah,
That was it. It came down to them two. The rest of them stood afar off watching and mocked him and said,
mm,
don't you know your master is going to be taken from you today? And he said, yeah, I know it. Be quiet. In other words, it's like they're mocking and he's believing. He said, I know it. And Elijah said, stay here, stay here, stay here, stay here. No, no, I'm going with you. And when the Jordan parted and they both passed over, I mean, we're talking about a flowing river parted in the middle. How does that happen? How does that happen? Why didn't the water disappear on one side? It's a river, it's not an ocean, it's not a sea. This is a river. And it parted
yeah,
hither and thither.
yeah. It does. You can see the downstream parting, but nobody ever explains the upstream because if it's suddenly congealed, all the water behind is going to start backing up. They never explain that
No,
miracle. You
and
know?
on Elijah's time, if it's a rolling river
Yeah,
and it splits hither and thither, What happened to the water on the side that's flowing?
Right,
Why didn't it
exactly.
run dry?
Yeah,
It just
exactly.
stayed.
It congealed both directions or something. I mean, we can
But
only speculate, right?
yeah, but in Joshua's time, when he crossed, it said it was cut off from above.
So that's a different one, huh? That
Well,
was just cut it off.
it's kind of different.
Yeah, it
And
is.
but Elijah stops and think about it. He's in the middle of this thing. And he looks at Elisha and says, "What do you want me to do for you? What would you have the Lord do for you before I'm taken?" He ain't recanted. I'm going to be caught away. What if the prophet had told everybody, "I'm going to be caught away here in a few days"? Uh, and I mean, he said it. He never backed up on anything he said like that.
Yeah.
And he said the only thing ever depressed him was Israel wouldn't stand up when he outran the king's chariot and throw Jezebel out on her ear. So he said, "Well, if you see me when I'm taken, you can have this double portion." He gets it. The water has come back together. It's flowing
Yeah.
again. Elisha walks up, takes the tallit of Elijah, hits the water, and says, "Where is the God of Elijah?" Boom, it parts
Yeah.
again. All the other prophets that wouldn't believe it said, "The Spirit of the Lord rest on Elijah, rest on Elisha now." Well, that didn't take prophets to know that.
They could
They
see
could,
it.
they could see it. And so he comes back, he heals the water at Jericho. That's Elisha Springs to this day in
Oh,
Jericho.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you
It's
know?
called Elisha Springs, and it came from when he said that and healed that water. Then he goes
Amazing.
back to Bethel, the house of God, and they mock him. The house of God, the church, mocks the prophets. Elisha turned around and cursed them in the name of the Lord. Lord, he called forth their harvest. And 2 she-bears came out of the wood and tore 42 of them, ripped them up. And on it went, leading up to that event you were talking about. And he said, tomorrow about this time. He didn't say tomorrow at exactly this time. He said tomorrow about this time. It could have been a minute earlier, a minute later. He said about this time. Timing is always put in the mouth of the hands of a man. And God has to work with that timing somehow. But his purpose never changes.
Well,
Never changes.
it's more and more clear all the time how much, I mean, the Abraham, the Moses, all of those things
Yeah,
paint a complete picture. And if it was
yeah,
like that way in the Old Testament, I think one would say, how much more is it that way now when it's
yeah.
personal covenant, the new
Mm-hmm.
covenant written on your heart? I like, you can't get away from the God. And God always having me stress, when I
Yeah,
received Christ, they said you'd like to receive him as your personal savior. And so that's kind of throughout my life, God reminds me, did you want
yeah,
this person? I had some people that, well, some of you have already seen it, that were really, really, really cursing us and trying to shut us down because of the prophecies and the guests and everything. And God kept saying to me, what do you want me to do? And
what do
and
you
I
want me to do?
and I said the only thing I dared to say, and I'm seriously, this is just like this. I said, I just want them to stop. Well, what do you want me to do? I said, I just want them to stop because I'm not gonna ask for something
Understand?
in fear that he would do it.
I
But
understand.
yeah,
Let me say this one last thing about timing,
yeah,
and then I want to at least close it on Trump again.
yeah, go for it.
Okay? Uh, in the story of the Good Samaritan, you've heard me say it before, but with all of this said today, you begin to understand. People begin to understand time. We live in time. God does not live in time.
Yeah,
He created time. He cut a piece of eternity out for us to live in. So it should make only sense to us that the timing of the prophecies have to be within the realm of a man.
yeah,
And God is working with choice and
yeah,
time. If he's just overriding men's choice, Steve, then it's no more than the Islamic people believe when they say, if I blow this up, Allah told me to do it. If I fall and trip going to blow it up, it was Allah's will. If I get up and blow myself up, it's Allah's will. If I decide not to blow it up, it's Allah's will. If
Hmm.
I sneeze while I'm going and drop it, then it was the will of Allah. Everything is the will of Allah to them. Christians are acting no different. They act
Wow.
like they have no say-so in this thing at all.
Wow.
Then I don't even know why you're praying if you believe that.
Yeah.
Now, here is the thing. In the story of the Good Samaritan, it says a lawyer came out, a doctor of the law, and I got 5 minutes to tell it, I
Go for
guess,
it.
because we always close about,
Yeah. Well, there's grace on this, so.
okay. Yeah, we live under grace, don't we,
Yeah,
Sid?
we totally do.
All right. And this is a special broadcast.
Yeah, it is,
So,
by the
so
way.
anyway, uh, you've got the story of the Good Samaritan. All right. It says that Jesus, now the lawyer comes to him and says, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said, "Well, you're a lawyer. What's written in the law? How readest thou?" Now that's really different. How readest thou? Because however you read the scripture is going to determine what you get out of it. How do
Yeah.
you read it? He says. So he starts talking about, he said, well, there was a certain man, and he said, well, first of all, he says, you'll love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength, and all your might, and your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, yes, do that, and you'll live. He said, the Holy Ghost said, but he willing to justify himself said, who is my neighbor? He said, so the man wants to know why he can't make himself right, why he can't justify himself. He said, well, who is my neighbor? Now, Jesus has got to answer who his neighbor is and why he can't make himself right, all in one teaching. So Jesus says this, there's a certain man who left Jerusalem and traveled down to Jericho. And he said, on the way down to Jericho, he fell among thieves. And he said, which wounded him, stripped him of his raiment,
Hmm.
wounded him, and left him half dead.
Hmm.
And he said, and while he's laying there, a priest came by, saw him, and passed by on the other side. He said, so likewise a Levite came by, saw him, passed by on the other side. He said, but a certain Samaritan came by in his journey, saw him, had compassion on him, bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, took him to the inn, gave him to the innkeeper, said, here's 2 pence, you keep him until I come back, and if he owes you anything else, I'll pay for it when I return, if I'm any longer in my return. So, and he said, now who is his neighbor? And the lawyer said, well, I guess it's that one. He said, yeah, so you go and do that. And so, but he also answered why he couldn't make himself righteous. Because he didn't say it was a parable, Steve. He said there was a certain man. This really happened. And he's speaking of Adam. He said, you
Okay.
can't make yourself righteous because Adam, and Adam's home was in Jerusalem, where we know Jerusalem now, the city of the great king. He said he left his place and traveled down the bloody way to Jericho, because Jericho is actually the Hebrew word for moon, and the ancient Hebrews teach that's where Satan's throne used to sit, was on the moon.
Hmm.
They're speaking of Jericho. That's where he was on the earth when he said, I'll ascend into heaven, so forth. He's on Jericho. That's why Joshua had to take it first, Jericho.
Hmm.
And that's why it was cursed. So anyway, Adam goes down the bloody way to Jericho, on his way to the moon, and on his way down there, he said he falls among thieves. But the Greek says he lighted among them, or he joined them. He joined
Oh.
up with some thieves. Adam committed treason,
Oh, I
and
see.
he joined up with some thieves. Watch now, they wounded him, stripped him of his glory, his garment. They didn't take his
Hmm.
money, they wanted what he wore. They wanted his covering. They wounded him, left him half dead. Now Adam knows good and evil. He only knew good before. So he's laying there wounded, half dead. The priesthood came by and couldn't save him. Passed by on the other side. The Greek says he went the opposite. The Levitical law, the Levite, couldn't save him. So he went the opposite. But it said a certain Samaritan came by in his journey, had compassion, and went straight to him. A Samaritan is somebody who's half Jew. It's a half Jewish person. A Samaritan is somebody whose mama is Jewish, but their daddy's something else. Jesus' mama is Jewish, but his daddy is God. And so he compares himself to that Samaritan. And he said he came by, bound up his wounds, poured in oil, the anointing, wine, the blood, put him on his own beast, carried him to the comforter, to the innkeeper, and said, here's enough money. Here's 2 pence. That's 2 days' wages. 1 day is as 1,000 years. 1,000 years is as 1 day. He said, here's enough to keep the man for 2,000 years. If I'm any longer in my coming, I'll pay it when I get back. Time was given a variance to extend or shorten at that moment in time. He said, Comforter, you take care of the man. He has the oil. He has the wine. He has you, the Comforter. He has enough to hold him for 2,000 years. And if I'm longer than 2,000, so there's a possibility he can delay something or bring it back. So why is timing even mentioned?
Yeah.
Because he's working with people and he's working with what he's going to do. But is he coming back? Absolutely, he's coming back. So see how the time varies?
Yeah, it is that's a really good, not just an analogy, a metaphor. It's like, but he's making a real, some of it's literal. It's,
So when I say the only thing can keep Trump out of the White House is Trump, it's because the timing of when he goes back was placed in his hands. If he stood up tomorrow and said, I ain't going, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Nothing. But does it change the prophecy? No. Somebody else would raise up from another place and bring every bit of it to pass.
But the good news is Trump is not giving any signs of that. He's saying, watch November 5th.
Right.
It's going to be the most amazing,
So he's determined the time.
Yeah.
And everybody with any sense knows this time. Now, they won't deny it this time. If something comes up and they try to say he didn't win this time, Steve, I mean, there is no way on this planet he don't win this time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it would have to be a blatant, outright, in-your-face theft.
Yeah.
And they know it. And Noah Harari, even, who's ushering in a one-world government, even was asked. They asked him, they call him the prophet. So the dark side's prophet prophesied this. They said, do you think Trump will win? Will he be elected? He answered these words, it is likely. He said, but if he does, it will be the kind of death blow to the one world government we have built so far.
That's an actual true prophecy from a false prophet, right? However you would say
from
that.
A scared false prophet.
Yeah. When I heard that he had said that, and I think I heard the clip.
I heard it.
And it was like, oh man, that is sweet to my ears because they're giving up, but it's going to take it right to the end. Can I ask you this thing before we finish up here? And that is, supposedly Trump is they're gonna try to arrest him. They're really gonna try to put him in prison, jail, whatever. What has God shown you, if anything, on that matter?
I don't think that's going to happen, but here is the thing. You know, they say this is kind of funny. It's not
Okay.
funny,
Yeah.
but it is funny because God sits in the heavens and laughs
Yeah.
at the plans of men. Already the Secret Service and everybody is visiting the prison, saying if he comes here, they know he's going to win. And they say if he comes here, we've got to look around to see how we're going to set up the Oval Office to set up his office in prison and protect him and have everything. So, in other words, they will move the White House will have to
Move
become the
to that.
prison.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
and honestly, I mean, is this not the most hilarious thing?
It is.
It's
It
not
is.
him on
I mean,
trial.
it's one of the reasons they say, and have been saying, some people have been saying for months, get your popcorn out. This is the greatest show on earth. I mean, I think, in fact, Kat Kerr tells the story. This was before Trump ever was first president. God took her, I think it's 2012, to the
Yeah.
middle of the country, told her to put her staff in, and declared that the greatest show on earth had begun. Something like that.
That
And
don't
she did.
surprise me at
Yeah,
all.
that had happened, and she had really done that in obedience. And here's what it was. These were the words she said. Let the show begin. Those were the words.
Boy, it started, didn't it?
Yeah. Then that would have been in Obama's time if it was 2012. I
Well,
think I
and
got that right.
and if people want to know if prophecies are happening, somebody sent me a prophecy the other day. I don't know if you saw it. I sent it to you about the bearded one, how the
Yeah,
Lord
yeah.
said
We
he would
played. We
fall.
played it on the air. We played yours on there.
Well, somebody did this and put it together. It was Flyover Conservatives, I think,
Okay.
sent it to me. And I had said in the one prophecy that the jab master will fall and $1 billion will be lost after the bearded one in the Mideast falls. And as soon as that happened to them, Fauci is suddenly up on, they're trying to bring him on charges because, I mean, people are sending me things now that where he said, that he knew about this. It was all a hoax about standing 6 feet apart,
He
this and this.
made it up. He made it up. He said, "I just
Yeah.
made it up."
And none of that came out until the bearded one in the Mideast fell.
Isn't that interesting?
And
Isn't
so
that interesting?
it's like Kat saying, let the show begin. Well, she didn't miss it, did she?
No, she didn't.
It
Not at all.
began. It began
It
right
did.
after that. And so if what I'm gonna leave it with this on the prison thing.
Yeah.
David was never caught by Saul and put in jail. I'll just put it that way.
Okay.
And he wasn't. He just wasn't. If David if David goes to jail, it'll be his choice. And he's already saying, I don't mind that. He said
Hey,
that.
he's
I don't
he's
mind.
even he's egging him on. He comes out and says,
Yeah,
"I'm still on a gag order that they." I know the
yeah,
trial ended yesterday, and I'm still on a gag. And then he started uh, in your face saying stuff that you're not supposed to
yeah,
say under a gag order. And then he goes, "I don't care. It would be my pleasure to
yeah.
go to jail." But it's like, come on, bring it. He's like
They
saying, "Bring it on."
well, see, is he not expressing choice?
Yeah, he is expressing
It's
choice.
choice. And that's what I'm saying. You've got to remember the overall prophecy God gives will happen.
Yeah,
There's no way around it. But the players are given the time. And so you have to pray for the players.
yeah, it's
And
good.
and it works around till it happens on time every time.
And again, when it finally happens, then you realize, you look back, you go, man, right on schedule somehow.
It's
But
absolutely.
you don't see it until it's all done, and then
Uh-uh.
you go, oh man, right.
And
It's
in the
so
and in the fullness of time, God
yeah,
sent his son. In the fullness of time,
yeah,
God sent his son. And so you got to quit judging prophecy by your Islamic Chrislam ideas that God's just in control and you have nothing to say about anything.
Yeah. I mean, that point is so well made, Robin. And you know, every time I hear you talk in this subject and in this vein, it becomes clearer and clearer that God created us, gave us all the different covenants, the Abrahamic covenant, the new covenant, the Noah covenant, all the different, but we're under the new Abrahamic covenant. He won't do it without man.
No, and it's cut in the blood of his son now.
Yeah.
The covenants between God and his son now, they walked in the blood together as Abraham's substitute, Jesus. So we're in the covenant, but the covenant's made with Jesus. And we're his body, so we're in that covenant.
It's good.
And so, and in that covenant, he told the lawyer, he said, if I'm any longer, what?
Yeah, that's interesting. That once you put it into the 2,000-year thing, that he goes, oh, I see. He's given, I don't want to say wiggle room, but he's given a variance according to how things work out. When do I come? Around 2,000 years or something. You know?
What about Moses and the 400 years in captivity? Abraham prophesied, and yet 430 is talked about.
Exactly. It was. You want to say, Lord, was it 400 or 430?
It was.
It
now,
was.
all you can say is yes.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was when the fullness of the Amalekite sin had to be full.
That's right, because of the time.
Yeah.
And so Moses goes to the backside of the desert, and what does he do? What if he had stood in front of that bush and said, no, I don't think so? What do you think would have happened?
Well, and then Israel, when God comes to Moses in the desert by the bush, said, I've heard the cries of my people. Maybe they took an extra 30 years to cry out. Maybe they just didn't get around to being done with the slavery for 30 extra years. I don't know. That's just a thought.
Or Moses thought, the book of Acts says he thought they would have understood when he killed the Egyptian that he was going to deliver them. He already knew he was the deliverer.
Is that right? Is that true?
Oh yeah, that's what he said. And so look at Stephen's message. You can find it. I mean, he thought, he knew he was the deliverer, so he killed the Egyptian and thinking everybody's going to get behind me. When he seen they wasn't, he ran. He got to the backside of the desert, and the Lord said, I've seen the affliction of my people in Egypt by reason of their taskmasters, so I'm going to deliver them. He said, I'm going to deliver them by sending you. What if Moses had said, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Wonder who would have done it. Well, Aaron was already on his way. He was already coming to meet him. Yeah. If Moses had said no, Aaron might have said, I'll do it.
And he wasn't afraid to speak.
No.
So.
And he said, I'll do it. What if Aaron had said, no, me either? Joshua would have said, I got it.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, it was like that. So anyway,
that's really good.
I don't know if I'm making it clear or not, but I'm
very,
trying.
very clear, actually, clearer than ever and ever. It just keeps getting more and more clear, all this. Well, Robin, we got to get going here. Would you go ahead and pray for the people on the way out here? Well,
yes. Father, I thank you for the people today. I thank you for family, but they're your people. And Lord God, I thank you for them. And Lord God, I speak over their lives, Lord, that fear be abolished, that they'll not be afraid.